Hi guys, Tracy here with another scrapbooking process video. Today I'm going to be scrapbooking using the Ali Edwards quarterly scrapbooking kit, which is brand new. It comes out 4 times a year, and this one is called the Hearts kit, and each one is themed on a different shape. And so in it, you get 3 pieces of 12 by 12 double-sided pattern paper, and then you get 4 pieces of these smaller papers. They're 6 by 8, but they're actually a little bit bigger than that so that they can go into an album and be the same size as a page protector. You also get in this kit some chipboard and some of these really cute felt stitched hearts, which were my favorite thing in the whole kit, and then also some puffy hearts and some little acetate hearts as well. So I'm going to just put these embellishments in this little valet tray that I got from Chapters Indigo. And I'm actually going to use 2 pieces of the 12 by 12 paper for this layout, and I am scrap lifting a very old layout of my own that I did a while ago. And so I just took off 2 little half-inch strips off of 2 adjacent sides so that my inside piece of paper is now 11.5 by 11.5 instead of 12 by 12. And now I'm actually going to gut this paper because I really love it and I don't want to waste it. And so most of it will be covered by my layers. I just need that outside edge to frame my layout in. So that's what I'm going to do there. Then I'll still have more of that paper to use on another layout if I ever need to or want to. So I'm just taking out my half-size sewing machine. This is by Genome or Genome or however you say that company. And it's the same sewing machine as what used to be called the Sew Mini, S-E-W, Sew Mini. Now it's called New Home, I believe. And I have both of them. I have the Sew Mini and I also have the New Home. They're the identical machine. I keep my gray one threaded with black thread and my white one threaded with white thread. And that's a little bit of a luxury, but they're tiny and they didn't cost a whole lot of money. So I didn't mind doing that, having 2 of them on hand, because I was getting really annoyed with it was keeping me from sewing because of the changing of the thread every time. So anyhow, I'm a little spoiled. So I just changed my angle here so that you can see how I'm sewing on my page. It's really pretty easy. You just kind of line up the edge of your page with the presser foot and then just kind of sew along. I'm actually going to sew around 2 times. So the first time I'm just, sewing all the way around. And when I get to an edge, I'm kind of stopping at a place where the needle is fully in the paper. And then I just lift my foot, as you'll see me do right here, lift my foot, turn the paper 90 degrees, put the foot back down, and go ahead and keep on sewing. What that does is it gives you nice crisp corners where the corner of the page has a corner of the sewing. Otherwise, sometimes your thread tries to do a little crisscrossy thing at the edge where it does a little diagonal stitch instead, and I don't like that look, so this is how I do it. By sewing around it twice, it gives me, first of all, it gets pretty dark in the places where I overlap the thread entirely, but it also gives it a nice, relaxed, casual, doodly look as well, which is a look that I really like on my pages. So that's what I'm going for here. And what the sewing around the outside edges does is it just anchors the page. It brings some of that black element that's going to be on my frame into the page itself. And I'll also be able to repeat that in other parts of the layout, which you'll see me do as I go along. And it also gives me some really nice, beautiful texture as well. So now that that page is all overlapped, is all sewn, I'm going to now glue this piece to the other piece. Now what I could have done is I could have glued it and then sewn, but then I would be gluing through some of my adhesive, which is not very good for the inner workings of your sewing machine. So I do recommend that you stitch your paper before you glue it onto something. So I just changed my adhesive. What I'm using today is my Tombow Mono Permanent Adhesive, which is a tape runner. I love it. It's my favorite. That and my ATG, they're my 2 favorites. I like that they're nice, solid bond, and they hold up over time, but they're very forgiving so that if you change your mind when you've just glued things down, you can pull it off and it's not going to tear everything to pieces. So until you burnish it, it's not, I wouldn't say temporary, but it's not as permanent when it's just newly stuck together. So this 4x6 photo is a little bit too big for the design that I have in mind because I am scrap lifting an older layout that I did. I will link the process video to the older layout. It's early morning beauty. And so this photo was a little bit too big for that. So I printed it smaller. I can't remember what size this one was, but I'm actually not going to go with this one anyways. I think it was 2.5 by 3.5. Or 2.25, but no, it was 3.25 by 3.5, I think is what it was. But both of these were fairly low quality. My ink, my photo printer needed to be like the ink cartridge needed to be cleaned. So So anyhow, what I did this very weird thing. I lost some footage, which is why this is a little bit difficult for me to narrate here. I lost some footage, but what I'm doing here is I actually am just kind of trying to, while my printer is going through the process of cleaning its print heads, which takes quite a long time, I wanted to continue to scrapbook. So I just cut out of that original 4x6, I just cut it down to the size that I thought I wanted it to be. And then I had that extra photo that I had printed at the right size, but it was actually really poor quality. So I just attached the two of them together for no real reason, but it's just a placeholder. So just ignore the fact that it looks a little weird there. I'll replace it at some point. You'll see me do that. So this is where I lost some footage. So I had already put those layers together, and then I realized that I wasn't filming any of that. So the other photo was ready, and so here it is. It's printed at 3.25 by 3.5. I'm just referring to my layout that I'm scrap lifting. So I just took a screenshot of it, and I'll refer to it a couple of times, and you can check out that video. I will link it in a card. So in a little the little eye that comes up at the top right hand corner of your video, and at the end you should be able to click on that and see the video pretty easily if you want to watch this one first and then that one, or however you want to do it. So back when I was using the placeholder photo, that photo ended up being a little bit smaller than what I wanted, than what this one ended up being. And so the mat that I had cut for it was not working anymore. So I just used my ruler to tear a straight edge all the way around this so that I could have a little paper bag mat. And that's using the paper bag that the kit came in. Studio Calico kits used to come in these paper bags, and when they did, I used to use the paper bag all the time in my layers, and so I thought that this would be a bit of a throwback to my old school scrapbooking style, since I am scrap lifting a layout from back in those days. So I just brought over my doilies, even though I had already picked out this white one and this gold one. I just brought my doily drawer over so that you could see how I keep my doilies in this drawer. I have all kinds of them because I've been collecting them for a very long time, and whenever I see them, it's kind of hard to find the really good quality intricate ones, so whenever I see them, I buy a bunch of them and I just put them aside. So over the years, I've gone from having only one or two to having a good assortment of different colors and sizes. So now that I'm working with different sizes, I needed to kind of pull out some more doilies. Just when you're using those gold ones, especially the gold ones, which are a little on the pricey side, just make sure that you're careful, bend the edges, and make sure that you're not inadvertently using two of them, because it's an easy mistake to make and they are quite expensive. So you want to make sure you get as many as you can out of your package that you buy. So these acetate hearts are exactly the same colors as the girls' dresses, so I definitely want to use those, like the purple one and the turquoise one. And I'm just pulling out a couple of other things that have either the turquoise or the purple. I'm also pulling out a little pink and some grays and neutrals as well. Now this strip was the leftover strip from that Love pattern paper that I kind of have that long horizontal layer going behind. That's just the flip side of it, was that kind of very nice scripty writing. So I thought I'd use that as another layer. And then again, because I'm scrap lifting an old school layout, I thought I'd pull out these really old embellishments that I have. What I did was I used temporary adhesive to glue them onto these tags so that they'd be easier for me to kind of thumb through. And I keep them in that little Vinylmation box that I had, that I've got a special Vinylmation from. And they've been in that box for about 10 years now, from way back when my channel was new. I've been YouTubing for 11 years, and so this was the way I used to store them way back in the day, and these are still stored that way. Just these ones. I store my new ones differently. My new die cuts are stored in a different way, but I can share that in a video if you guys would like, how I store and how I used to store all of my stuff. A lot of these are Ellie's Studio and Studio Calico leftovers from kits from way back in around like 2010-ish. And so these are all numbers. I'm actually not going to use these, but I thought I'd flip through them just to see. So as you can see, any things that I think I might use, I just put up above my page so that I can draw on them as needed. And then here's another one of those 6x8 papers. 6x8-ish. It's not exactly 6x8, but I'm going to layer that one with that one. And so all of these layers, all of these big paper layers here are all from the 6x8 papers that came in the Ali Edwards kit. And I just used my ruler to tear them into the shapes that I wanted. And based on the original layout, it was like a square photo, and then it was all on a rectangular shape, so it looked like there were almost like two squares together. One of those squares held my title, and then the other square held the photo. So that's sort of what I'm going with today, is a rectangular layout, like a rectangular bunch of layers with a photo over on the far right side, a square photo. It's not exactly square, but it's square-ish. So all of these rectangular layers are coming together quite nicely. I like how this is looking, and I decided to move that chipboard pink, that large piece of chipboard, over to the side, over to the right side instead of on the left side, because I do want my title to be over on the left side, and so I thought it would be too distracting to have that behind there. So I'm just pulling out my sewing machine again. I keep it already plugged in, and those cords are just all ready to connect whenever I'm ready to sew. And that makes it a lot easier for me to do my sewing. So I changed my angle again, and I just have to kind of get myself ready here to sew. And I'm just going to do some plain straight stitching as basically an anchoring point for some embellishments that I think I'm going to be putting down. I haven't really decided what those embellishments will be, but I do know I want them in the top right hand corner and the bottom left hand corner of my page, and then maybe someplace else as well to have a bit of a visual triangle going on. But for now, all that I know is the top right and the bottom left. So something weird happened with my machine here, and it took me a minute to rethread it. I think the thread just got pulled out, and so anyhow, this machine is super easy to thread, and so I just had to. The hardest part was actually seeing the eye of the needle and getting it in, because my eyes are a little old and they're having a bit of trouble seeing tiny little things, but I managed to eventually get it threaded, as you can see there. And I just ran different lengths of lines of stitches in both of those corners, 3 in each corner. And then I don't know how much of the threads I'm going to leave. I definitely want to trim off the back threads, so I trimmed those short. And then for now, I left some of the threads long. As you can see, I'm cutting some of them short and leaving some of them long, because you can always go back and cut them again if you need to, but you can't put them back on if you change your mind. So I like to err on the side. And then once I decided where those hearts would be, I knew that I needed that thread to be shorter, or it was just too distracting. Now I really like the boldness that this die cut piece gives me. This was a print and cut, like it was a digital piece that I bought online, and then I sent it to Staples Copy and Print to get it all printed. Or it even could have been a Studio Calico digital printable that they used to send with their kits that I got. I know I got it printed at Staples Copy and Print because I remember the big 8.5 by 11 sheet of them and cutting them up. So basically, I just want little bits of black showing just to add a little bit of anchoring and to also bring that black and white from the trim that's on the matting of the layout, just to bring it into the inner part of the layout. And so I'm just playing around here with different ways that you could layer these things. I would like that tab to look like it's sewn in place, but I didn't sew it in place, so I just trimmed it down and stuck it under so that it looks a little bit like the stitching might have caught it. And now this chipboard piece is adhesive, so I just took the adhesive backing off of it, and now I'm going to replace it because at this point I don't know exactly where I want my layout to go relative to the overall page. I'm just working on these layers first. Now I thought about shifting that heart. I kind of wish that more of it was showing on the side there, if it was just at a slightly different angle and more of it was showing down the right hand side, but it's stuck in place, so I'm leaving it. I had a couple of these puffy clouds that I could use as embellishments, and I chose the one that has a really, really subtle wood grain pattern on it. You can't see it because my camera is too overexposed here, but it has a very, very subtle wood grain pattern on it, and hopefully at the end when you see the photos you'll be able to see it. But I chose that because these photos were taken in the woods. So the other one had a grid pattern, and I was just pointing out that I like to kind of go with my theme whenever possible. So I'm just repositioning that black and white striped piece so that you can see a little tiny smidgen of it. You can't really see that it's black and white striped, but it peeks out a little tiny bit. So I'm just tucking things in every here and there based on the things that I already pulled out. So I already know what things I want to use here. So I just using another half of that little black and white striped piece. And I would rather put that on the opposite side than put it on the adjacent side, just because I like things to be like part of the repetition isn't only the pattern, but it's also the orientation. Just used some Stampin' Up dimensional adhesive there. Those are my pop dots of choice. And so I only took the backing off the center one because I want to be able to spread apart these layers and add other things in between there if I want to. So I just stuck another one there just to hold the space, but I didn't take off the backing so that I could pull it up and layer some things under there if I wanted to. So that cloud that says number on it, I'm going to use that to put a caption. And then this is just a 4x6 piece of vellum that I had left over from a Project Life application that I was going to do, and I ended up changing my mind on it. Now, this would be the perfect thing to repeat if I was going to do a top corner cluster, like in the top left-hand corner to balance this off. I'm not going to do that, but if I was going to do that, I would have pulled off a piece of that vellum that's covered, and it's to be able to reuse it someplace else on the page, but I'm not, so. And I really like how that vellum kind of shows up on two different edges. So now I took a little bit of break from recording just to think about what I wanted my title to be. And what I think I want it to be is Watch Them Grow. And because my original title used this Dymo tape, I wanted to use this Dymo tape again because I'm kind of trying to make this one be a bit of a throwback to the original layout, not only in design, but also in some of the elements on it. And so I have these various label makers. One of them is a Dymo label maker, but I actually don't like the font that I have on that one. It's a cursive font. I actually do. I really like that font, but I don't like that font for this application. And so it's a cursive font, and I will use that on a different page. But I also have these two Motex embossing machines, Tapewriter version 3 it says, and it says that it's made in Korea. And I ordered it online probably a good 10 years ago. And this layout is from 8 years ago, so it was probably before then. And so anyhow, I do have two of those as well. And so I'm just feeding through some tape. And I've got a whole bunch of tapes that I bought on, I might have actually bought those tapes from Etsy or from Amazon back in the day. And so I'm just typing out Them Grow because I thought I'd make my title be Watch Them Grow. And this one doesn't cut quite as well. It does have a cut feature, but it just doesn't work all that well. Now this actually looks pretty good, Watch Them Grow, but I decided to change the word watch for a couple of reasons. So first of all, I'm thinking about putting Them Grow on gray tape because it seems like it's too much contrast between the watch being like that bright white and then Them Grow being such a dark black. I actually kind of like it now in retrospect that I see it from this angle, but at the time that I was working on it, it felt like too black and white and not enough contrast with the word watch. And I felt like watch would get kind of lost, or I don't know. So I pulled over my Razcog and I was going to film my process of pulling out letters, but I very quickly found these block gray letters that are foam, and I really, really love them. So I just used them. So I didn't even show my process because I literally just pulled out a random set or two, and it was my favorite one. So these are called Stylist, and they're foam letter stickers. They're thickers. And I do have them repackaged in my 6x12 bags that I repackage all of my thickers in. And another throwback to the good old days, I'm using waxed paper to decide where I want my title to be. This keeps curling. It keeps curling up, and so it's a little bit tricky to kind of lay it out and decide where it's going to go, but I'm doing my best here. Decided to staple those together with my tiny attacher so that they stay put. And I know that I want this to be right above the black threads, so I'm just going to go ahead and put that in place so it'll stop curling up on me, because that was a little annoying. And now I'm going to try to make the word watch fit entirely on these layered papers, and it was able to fit. So I like how that looks. To be honest, I think that the original word watch might have worked just as well there, if maybe not even a little bit better. I'm not sure. It was a little bit distracting with the scripty words behind the word watch, plus the word watch being scripty. So anyhow, I do like how this looks. Now I'm just going to toss in a couple of more embellishments down on this side. Now originally I wanted those black and white stripes to be going in the same direction as the other black and white stripes, but it really doesn't matter because you can't even see that there are stripes on the top right hand side. So it's fine. It's just a hit of black is all that it ends up being. I'm using one of those Ellie Studio labels. It says it's a place to put the date, and it has, the reason I chose that is that it has that fake black stitching on it, so it kind of matches the black stitching that I already have on my page. Sticking in a couple of more little tabs. I like that one. I like the coloring of that one. So I'm just kind of being mindful of the fact that I want turquoise, I want purple, and I want pink. And then the rest of them should really just be like different neutrals, like shades of gray and black and gold. So for this one, because I want it to sit on top of that piece of chipboard, the little outline chipboard heart, I just used Stampin' Up! Dimensional adhesive on either side of it just to hold the space there so it didn't have to bend around. Just pulling up some of the little edges here to give my layers a little bit more interest. And when you curl them like that, they just cast a little bit of a gray shadow on your page, and it just looks really nice. Now I'm using my Studio Calico wood grain roller date stamp, which I've had since back in the day that I made the original layout. These are all fairly old products other than the main Ali Edwards kit that I'm using. And I just stamped separately the date and then the year. And I did use my finger to remove the ink from the year when I stamped the date. So I'm mindful of the fact that my finger has black ink on it and I don't want to get that ink on any part of my layout. So I'm going to grab a baby wipe and wash my finger quickly. Now, I have these little trays that I got from IKEA, and I keep them in one of my 3-drawer Recollections cubes from Michaels, and they fit really nicely in those 3 drawers, those 3-drawer unit drawers. And so I'm just pulling out some special embellishments here, just something that will kind of pump up the page a little bit. Those cork asterisks look quite nice. They add a little bit of boldness to the page. And then I'm going to put a little flare badge. The original layout has a flare badge in almost the same place, so I'm putting one there. And that flare badge just says notes. And there were cabochons on that original layout. Those are just like molded resin flowers. And so I have some of the exact same ones that I was working with that day, still have them in my stash. So I'm actually going to use ones that are slightly bigger. These might be from Maggie Holmes or something, these ones that I'm using, but the ones that I was using on that original page is still in that box. I just wasn't using them today. So I'm just showing you that they were in those 2 places. I'm putting them in 3 places though. So I'm using 2 off-white ones and 1 turquoise. And now I'm actually going to bring you over to my Recollections cubes across the room from where I typically scrap. And I have these 2 cubes that are part of my bigger unit of cubes, and they house my punches. So I did have to move how I store my punches. So I now keep them on these shelving units, and the shelves can pull out so that you can see what punches I have. So I think I might do a video just on my punch storage and how it's evolved over the years. So keep an eye out on my channel for that at some point. I pulled out the same punches that I was using on that original layout, and I can't remember which of these I used, but I typically pull these both out at the same time and audition both versions. My original thought was that I would want the thicker of the 2, which I actually like not as much as I like this one that I'm using right now. It's very intricate, but I felt like the intricate one might be a bit too busy. But once I auditioned it on the page, I actually really liked how it looked. So I'm going to go with the more intricate of the 2, and I just cut them out of the same paper bagging that I was going to use for the mat, but then it ended up being too small, so I didn't use it. So it's good to kind of keep those sorts of scraps on hand until you're done your project, because then you can repeat elements. The reason I use that, and I'm just using some Tombow Mono multi-adhesive to glue the cork and also the resin flowers down. The reason I use the paper bag is that I didn't want to introduce another element to the page. So I felt like there was kind of a lot going on at this point. There's tons of different textures and shapes and papers and patterns all kind of stuffed into this page, so I didn't want to introduce another thing here. So the paper bag element is something that I could repeat, so it's really just the only thing that I'm introducing is the shape and not a whole other texture or a whole other material. Now I have these loose sequins that came in a prize pack that I got from Crop and Create the last time I went to a crop, which was right as the pandemic was starting to happen, and so it was the last time that I attended any large group event. And so anyhow, I have these sequins from that prize that I won. It was a close to my heart prize pack, a page kit. So I have those, and I thought that they would make a really nice alternative to splatter. And I really love how this embellishment looks. To me, I feel like that is what makes the page, is just that final touch of adding that hexagon piece on either side there. So my resin flowers are not 100% dry, so I was a little bit hesitant to do what I just did there, but they were dry enough. And that Tombow Mono multi-adhesive, it tacks up pretty quickly as long as you don't use too much of it. And I just feel like adding that bold black and white element on either side there, it does the trick for this layout. It really kind of finishes it off. Now, to make my sequins look natural, instead of placing them one at a time, I just decided to just let them fall on the page. And then what I'll do is I'll take some of them off because too many of them fell. It was just too much. So I'm selectively removing some of them. And then the other thing I'm doing is I'm just flipping any of the ones that landed upside down. So I will kind of pull out some of these. Now, some of those stars in particular, as well as some of the circle sequins, they're looking a little blue, and that's because they have that iridescent sheen on them. They're actually like that white with an iridescent sheen, but they are shining as quite a blue color, both on this video and in real life. So once I get everything all kind of sorted out, I'm actually thinking about that and thinking the only thing I don't like about this is that so many of these sprinkles end up looking blue. And so what I'm going to do is the stars in this mix only come in that iridescent color. They don't come in gray and silver and white like the other ones do. So the circle ones, I'm just replacing any iridescent ones with either gray or white or silver or whatever other shapes I have that are the similar size. And then I thought I'd just leave the stars. And the more I look at it, the more I think I don't like that. So I went into my Sequin Storage, which I keep in these Darice bead containers. And these Darice bead containers are quite expensive, and I was very hesitant to buy them. I wanted them for a long time before I bought them, but I'm actually very pleased with the storage solution. So it's good. I'll try to do a video on that at some point too, to just talk about what I like about it and why I decided to splurge on it. But anyhow, so what I'm doing here is I don't have tiny little stars the way that those sequins were that I'm replacing, but I do have these. It's a mixture of gold and blue stars, and they're bigger, but they still look pretty nice, and they fit with I'm just using the gold ones, not the blue ones. It's kind of like a turquoise color. Actually, the turquoise ones would have been fine, but I just didn't want to introduce another thing. So I replaced almost all of the stars with those gold larger stars, and I only kept a few of the tiny little iridescent blue. Well, they're iridescent, but they shine as a blue. But you know, in some lights, like the way I'm looking at them right now, they're actually shining a bit more of a purple, and that quite works well with the layout, because there is purple in the layout and in her dress. So now I'm just going to painstakingly glue with my Tombow Mono Multi-Adhesive all of these little sequins down. So I just pick it up, put a dab of glue, and then put it back down. And I'm just kind of going through each corner of the layout because I laid them in 3 different places. Now a couple just splattered over here, so I just decided to leave them. That's not actually necessarily a cluster, it's more of like a secondary cluster. And then I'll put some up here. This page was really fun to do. It was fun to kind of revisit a page that I've always really loved. I had a really fun time making it the first time around, and I had a really fun time making it this time around. And so that's always an option when you're kind of feeling like you've lost your mojo, or for me in this case, I'm feeling just like a little bit rusty with using my design elements in a page, and kind of just getting reacquainted with my supplies and how everything works together. And so it was really nice to just kind of revisit this. I often, not often, but I will sometimes lift other people. Like in some of my older videos, sometimes you'll see me, I'll put a copy of the page at the beginning of the layout of the video, and then kind of do my take on it. Or even more common, what I would do is use a sketch when I'm feeling like I just need a little bit of extra inspiration. So what I might do is actually pull out some of my sketchbooks and do some sketches over the next couple of layouts as well. I want to get another layout, or maybe even squeeze a 3rd layout out of this Ali Edwards kit. It doesn't look like it's going to get me very many 12 by 12 layouts, but it's going to get me some. Okay, so now I'm doing my close-ups, and what I really need to remember to do is to change the exposure on my camera, because this is just a little bit too overexposed. Oh, there we go. I did remember. Oh, that's good. Anyhow, I'm still getting used to my new camera setup, which I really only used a few times before I kind of took a break from scrapbooking. So anyhow, this is how the layout looks up close, and I just like to do these kind of close-up videos before I show the photos. I really love how this one came together, and I think it does a really nice job of supporting the story. You might be wondering, where's the journaling on this? And I often don't do journaling, so it very well might have ended up just looking like this. But I did decide to add some journaling, so I'm going to put the journaling up here in the top center, kind of off to the right a little bit, but mostly to the top center. And I kind of wish I had staggered these lines a little bit instead of having them all kind of like left justified there. But anyhow, my journaling says, with COVID restrictions lifting, we went to Lewis Park for a small photo shoot, Scott and the kids. And so that's the layout. And I actually journaled on the in-between lines. Like I kind of, I drew 3 lines, but I wrote on 6 lines, if that makes sense. And then I just went back and added the lines. So here are the photos of how this one turned out. I just took them on my phone just because I'm in a bit of a rush today, but I hope that you guys enjoyed this layout and this process video. Make sure that you check out my channel because I will be producing more regular content now that things have calmed down for me. Make sure that you're subscribed if you might have gotten unsubscribed by accident, because YouTube does that sometimes and I haven't produced content for a while. But take care and have a really great scrappy week.